Hello Hatham, it's Mr. Scott here. I just want to say a big well done for producing your A3 poster. Of course that was for the Royal Geographical Society competition called Why Does Antarctica Matter? What I'd like to do is give you some feedback on your poster, and a good place to start is to look at the competition criteria. This is what the judges are going to be looking for in your poster. So we're looking for an A3 poster. You need to give 2 or more reasons why Antarctica matters. You need to use 2 or more annotated diagrams, graphics or maps, and you also need a conclusion that clearly outlines which reason you believe to be the most important. There are also some general criteria. Spelling, punctuation and grammar are important. The accurate use of geographical terminology, clearly labelled diagrams, graphs, maps, charts, the accurate use of symbols, scales and keys, and the original and independently produced piece of work. So this had to be your own work, not something just copied from somewhere else. I think you've matched the criteria very well. This here is your section describing why Antarctica matters. You've got a map, a diagram of a food chain, and you've also got your conclusion, which extends just outside of your A3 poster, so I hope the judges aren't too critical of that. I think what it does show is just how difficult it is cramming all this information in quite a small space. The first reason you gave was in reference to the Southern Ocean. You've mentioned that the Southern Ocean is rich, full of nutrients, which supports the growth of phytoplankton. And what I liked about this is that idea is now linked to this graphic over here, where you explain the food web. You then go on to say that Antarctica plays a role in regulating the Earth's climate, and you've mentioned the white Antarctic ice caps, so that's known as an albedo effect. It's reflecting the sun's heat energy back out into space. You've also mentioned the ocean currents as well, and indeed Antarctica is a place which actually drives the Earth's deep ocean currents. You then talk about Antarctica as being a huge natural laboratory, and it's a place that we can explore. I would have liked you to have talked a little bit more about why this is so special and why it's so natural, and of course there you would talk about the fact that Antarctica is a relatively untouched part of our planet. There's been very little impact that humans have had in this particular area. Moving on, you talk about the ozone layer and the fact that British scientists, the British Antarctic Survey, were the first people to discover the hole in the ozone layer. Finally, you talk about global climate change. I think you save your best point to last, the fact that the Antarctica ice sheet, that thick sheet, you don't tell us how thick it is, but it's several kilometers deep in places, and even deeper than that. It acts as a historical capsule, a time capsule. So the atmosphere is basically trapped in between snowflakes, that's then compressed into ice, and over time we've basically got a history of the Earth's atmosphere. We can sample that atmosphere today and look at the levels of carbon dioxide that once existed on planet Earth, and this has been a huge find for us. Let's now look at your food chain. So as we know, a food chain always starts with the producer. So that's the phytoplankton. Here you've called it algae, little spelling mistake here, but I like the use of your key. The algae is indeed the producer. You've then got the consumer here, and that consumer in a sort of a pinky colour you've identified as the killer whale. That in fact is the top predator in this food web, and in reality all of these organisms here are consumers. The krill is the primary consumer, which is eaten by fish, a secondary consumer. The next thing to look at is your map, and just some guidance here. When you use maps, or perhaps your food web here, you need to tell the reader where you actually got that information from. What was your source? You perhaps put your source here as a website and the name of that website, and then the reader can decide whether they think that's a source that they can trust. For your map, I think it would have been interesting to find a map that would highlight areas of high productivity of the Southern Ocean. So I know for a fact that the Ross Sea is a particularly productive area. You've got an interesting section here about Ernest Shackleton and his remarkable journey in Antarctica. It's not very well related to why Antarctica matters, so I think you'd need to make a case why this history and why this exploration is so special, what that tells us about us perhaps as humans. In summing up, you make out that you tell us that the continent has been very important at telling us about climate. I like that. You've also got something which is quite intriguing. You say that the sun's rays mix with their icy waters, causing a chemical reaction. I'm not sure what chemical reaction you're talking about there. It's a good idea when you make a claim like this that you give an example and also say why that reaction is important. In the second half of in your conclusion, you talk about Antarctica being the natural laboratory, and again I think you need to say why it's so remarkable, what seems to be so unique about this place, and therefore why it's an area we'd want to conserve so we can continue learning about its wonders. But I do like the use of language in here. I'd just like to finish up by acknowledging the effort you've put into this. I think it's fantastic. It may not be a competition winner, but I know that you'll have learned something by carrying out this task. And if you do want to drop into my lab and learn a little bit more about climate change, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. In the meantime, your poster is proudly on display in my room. So thanks very much.